The red truck slowed down as the dirt road began to raise a golden cloud of dust. The crunch of gravel beneath the tires sounded like a goodbye that no one had asked for. Inside the back of the truck, a young woman held an old, worn-out leather suitcase and tried not to look back. Laughter came from the front seat, mixing with the sound of a phone recording. "Go on, get down, Clara. The farmer's waiting for you," mocked one of her sisters, stretching the words with irony. The driver honked twice, impatient. The truck stopped in front of a hand-painted wooden sign, "Walker Farm." Clara took a deep breath. The air smelled of wet earth and fresh hay, and for a moment she wished she could sink into the ground. She was wearing a frilly pink dress, heavy makeup, and high heels, everything carefully chosen by her sisters to make her look ridiculous. As she stepped onto the ground, her heel sank into the mud and laughter echoed from the truck. "Look, the princess of the barnyard," another voice jeered. The truck sped off, kicking up dust and leaving behind a trail of laughter. Clara stood there, suitcase in hand, the wind tangling her hair, shame burning her face. On the other side of the fence, a man watched in silence. Straw hat, denim shirt, calm eyes, he saw what no one else did. Ethan Walker, 34, a fourth-generation farmer, knew the sound of cruelty disguised as a joke. He had been raised to fix fences, but also to notice invisible cracks. And in that young woman standing in the dust, he saw one of those cracks, the kind that needed care, not judgment. He walked closer, opened the iron gate, and tipped his hat politely. "You must be Clara," he said, his voice firm and kind. She nodded, trying to steady her trembling voice. "Thank you for having me." "I didn't know." She glanced at her muddy heels, her smudged lipstick. "I didn't know it would be like this." Ethan replied simply, "Nobody here cares about dresses. You're home." The words lingered in the air, light and improbable. Clara had never heard anyone say "you're home" with so much meaning. She followed him down the gravel path to a white house with a wide porch. There, an elderly woman with gray hair and a floral apron waited with a smile. "So you're the city girl," said the warm, raspy voice. "I'm Nana Jo, Ethan's grandmother. Welcome." We prepared a room with a big window. Big windows help the heart breathe. Clara smiled faintly. Maybe it was the first real smile she'd had in a long time. The first day on the farm was a sequence of discoveries. The dog, Blue, ran toward her, wagging his tail as if they'd been friends forever. The smell of apple pie drifted from the kitchen, and the distant sound of cattle reminded her that the world there moved to a different clock. Ethan showed her the greenhouse full of tomatoes, the beehives, and the fence that marked the edge of the property. He spoke little, but every word seemed to carry weight. Clara listened carefully, jotting down notes in a small notebook she'd hidden in her suitcase, the same one where she wrote thoughts she never showed to anyone. At noon, on the porch, Nana Jo served pumpkin soup and a thick slice of homemade bread. "Here, we eat slowly," she said, gently pushing aside Clara's phone. "People who eat fast can't hear their own heart." Clara apologized, turned off the device, and for the first time felt free from the invisible weight of city life. That afternoon, she tried helping feed the chickens, but dropped half the corn and ended up being chased by one of them. She laughed at herself, and that made something rare happen, Ethan's quiet laughter. It wasn't mockery. It was connection. That night, exhausted, she fell into bed and looked out the window. The sky was covered with stars, a silent spectacle that made her cry softly. Outside, the wind moved through the trees and seemed to whisper something she couldn't quite understand. "You're not invisible here." The following days brought routine and learning. Nana Joe woke her early with the smell of coffee and the sound of an old radio playing country songs. Clara wore borrowed clothes, loose jeans and a plaid shirt, and joined Ethan in the barn. She learned to observe animals, to measure distance with her eyes, to understand that the land demanded respect, not strength. Ethan showed her how to read the weather. "Rain's coming," he'd say, sniffing the air. Clara tried to sense the same metallic scent and was surprised when she got it right. Her hands began to grow calloused, her body to adjust to the good kind of tiredness. Slowly, the initial embarrassment turned into curiosity. In the greenhouse, Clara marveled at the sight of seeds sprouting. "It's a miracle, how life fits inside something so small," she said, and Ethan tucked that sentence quietly into his heart. One night, the power went out. The farm was wrapped in a blue kind of darkness, and Ethan lit oil lamps. Nana Joe appeared with a tray of soup and old stories. She spoke about Grandfather Walker, who had once faced a snowstorm to save the herd, and about the family's promise that the land always returns the love it receives. Ethan picked up a guitar and began playing a soft tune, almost a whisper. Clara recognized it and, hesitant, joined in with her delicate voice. The sound of their two tones, his low and steady, hers sweet and trembling, filled the porch with a tenderness that even the wind didn't dare interrupt. "You sing," Ethan said, surprised. "I used to. When I was little. Then I forgot." "Then here, you'll remember," said Nana Joe, raising her mug of tea in a toast. The next days were full of small victories. Clara learned to handle the bees and discovered they recognized the scent of those who weren't afraid. She helped at the county fair, selling the farm's honey. At first, she hid behind the crates, shy and unsure. But when a little girl approached and asked if bees knew how to dance, Clara knelt down and explained with gentle wonder the magic of pollination. Within minutes, a small circle of children had gathered around, listening, mesmerized. From a distance, Ethan watched, feeling something stir inside him that he didn't yet have a name for. That night, back on the farm, Clara found a small jar of sunflower seeds on her bed with a handwritten note from Nana Joe: "Plant them when the time feels right." "Why sunflowers?" Clara asked her. "Because they're brave enough to turn their faces toward the light," the grandmother replied. "Sometimes we need to learn that again. But peace never lasts long. When happiness begins to bloom, envy and the past always find their way back." One morning, the phone rang. It was Clara's father, his voice cold and hurried. "Come home, Clara. This has gone far enough." "Dad, there are still 2 weeks left," she said. "Your sisters are worried about your image. They're saying you've become a joke on the internet." Clara frowned. "What do you mean?" Her stepmother joined the line. "Sweetheart, that farm life doesn't suit you. Come home before this story ruins the family name." Clara looked around the farmhouse, the fields, blue sleeping by her feet, the scent of living earth. All of it felt like safety. "I'm fine, Dad. I'm happy," she said, hanging up before her courage ran out. Yet the call reopened old wounds. One silent night, Clara confessed to Ethan the guilt she'd carried since childhood. Her mother had died in a car accident while going to pick up a notebook Clara had forgotten at school. I grew up believing that if I just disappeared, people would hurt less, she whispered. Ethan, at a loss for words, leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. It's not your fault, he said softly. You didn't kill your mother's love. She loved you enough to face a storm. Her love didn't end on that road. Clara cried the kind of crying that frees a river trapped for years. Nana Joe appeared quietly, handing her a handkerchief without saying a word. The following days were filled with a new kind of calm. Clara didn't talk much, but there was a lightness in her eyes. Every morning, she seemed closer to the woman she was meant to be. But on the other side of peace, hatred was gathering shape. Clara's sisters, frustrated that the video of her humiliation hadn't gone viral, decided to expose her differently. They created fake profiles on social media and began posting old pictures with cruel captions. The ugly daughter playing farmer. The family reject turned rural attraction. Ethan came across the posts by accident when a friend from town sent him a link. He showed them to Nana Joe, who murmured, "When darkness can't understand the light, it tries to put it out." Ethan thought about replying, but Clara stopped him. "It's not worth it," she said softly. "They want noise. Here, we live in silence." But that silence was about to be broken. The mornings grew even more golden. The sun rose lazily over the fields, and Clara had grown used to waking to the sound of Blue running and the soft movement of cattle. There was a natural music in the farm, the creak of the boards, the rustle of leaves, the buzz of bees, and Clara felt that each sound tuned her heart in a new way. Ethan, once a man of few words, began to look for reasons to talk. He showed her how to recognize a sick animal just by its eyes, explained how the land's balance depended on rotation, and how patience was part of every harvest. Sometimes they just stood by the fence, watching the horizon melt into distant blue. Time seemed slower there, steadier, more human. One warm afternoon, Ethan took Clara to the old wooden barn. "This is where my grandpa kept the harvest tools," he said. The place smelled of hay and memory. On the shelves, old photographs showed generations of walkers' proud smiles and calloused hands. Clara brushed her fingers over one where a couple smiled holding a calf. "They looked happy," she said. Ethan nodded. "Grandpa used to say happiness isn't measured by the size of your harvest but by the number of hands helping you gather it." Clara thought about her own life. She had never had helping hands, only judging eyes. In that moment, she realized how much she wanted to belong there, not as a guest, but as part of something real. That evening, she decided to plant the sunflower seeds Nana Joe had given her. She chose a patch of land near the fence where the sunlight hit strongest. Ethan watched quietly as she dug small holes, placed the seeds inside, and covered them gently. "Why sunflowers?" he asked. "Because they always turn their faces toward the light," she replied. Ethan smiled. "Then you're in the right place." But the cruel posts didn't disappear overnight. People from the city started to gossip, and some of Clara's acquaintances sent mocking messages. She read the first few, then deleted everything. The past had already taken too much space. Ethan noticed the heaviness in her eyes. Without saying a word, he left a gift in her room, a small framed photo he had taken without her knowing, Clara holding a calf, laughing. At the bottom, a simple inscription, "Here, you are real." The small gesture became an anchor. The next morning, Clara woke earlier than usual and went to help Ethan before he could even ask. They worked side by side, repairing fences and tending the vegetable garden. They didn't talk much, but the silence between them was comfortable. Sometimes their eyes said everything words couldn't. One night, Nana Joe prepared a special dinner. "The harvest is coming, and we'll need everyone's help," she said, waving her dish towel like a flag. "The county's harvest festival will be held here this year. Time to show what this land can do." Clara's eyes widened. "So many people coming here?" Nana Joe laughed. "It's good for the soul. The farm needs voices, laughter, music. And you, dear, are helping me organize it." Clara wanted to refuse, but the old woman wouldn't take no for an answer. In the following days, she found herself in the center of preparations, hanging lights, decorating tables, choosing flowers. Every detail mattered. The farm came alive again, full of movement. Ethan watched from afar, quietly mesmerized by the way Clara transformed the place. There was a softness in her that spread to everyone around. On the eve of the event, the sky promised good weather. The air was thick with the smell of baked apples and anticipation. Clara wore a simple light blue cotton dress, her hair tied with ribbons. When Ethan saw her, for a moment he forgot how to breathe. It wasn't magazine beauty, it was real beauty, born from serenity. "You look beautiful," he said honestly. She blushed. "Thank you. I think it's just the wind." The party began at sunset. Families from the county arrived with pies, laughter, and instruments. Children ran around, guitars played, and the lights above the tables glowed like tiny suns. Clara moved about helping others, smiling all the time. For a few hours, she completely forgot her past. But the past never forgets. A luxury truck pulled up at the entrance. The doors opened, and to Clara's horror, out stepped her family, her father, stepmother, and two half-sisters, dressed as if for a fashion show. People began whispering. Ethan noticed her tense posture and walked up to her. "Do you want me to ask them to leave?" She took a deep breath. "No. If I run now, I'll never stand tall again." The sisters approached, smiling with poison. "Clara! What a surprise to see you like this, rustic," the eldest laughed. "Mother wanted to see for herself if it was true you'd turned into some countryside legend." The stepmother added in her overly sweet tone, "Darling, we came to rescue you. This place isn't for you." Clara held her ground. "I'm fine, thank you. This is my home now." Her voice was firm, and the stepmother frowned, offended. "Home? Please. You've always been a stain on our image, and now you've become some farm attraction." Ethan stepped closer, standing by Clara's side. "No one's an attraction here," he said calmly but firmly. "Everyone works. Everyone's respected. If you came to make trouble, I suggest you stay on the road." The stepmother faked a smile. "Of course, we don't want trouble. We just want to show everyone the real Clara." With a quick gesture, one of the sisters pulled out her phone and, before anyone could react, started a live stream. Within seconds, the festival's big screen meant to show farm photos was hijacked by old footage: Clara's arrival, her ridiculous dress, the smeared makeup, the laughter, the taunts. Cruel laughter rippled through the crowd. Clara felt the ground vanish beneath her. Her hands shook. Her father looked uncomfortable, trying to intervene, but the stepmother stopped him with a glare. Let them see. It's for her own good. That's when Ethan stepped forward. He took the microphone and looked at everyone. Enough, he said, and the words sliced through the noise. This is a harvest celebration, not a courtroom. Clara came here because she had the courage to start over. While you mocked her, she was learning how to care for this land, for the lives that depend on it. You can play your videos, but you'll never capture what she's grown here. That doesn't fit on a screen, only in a life. The silence was immediate. Phones lowered. People looked at each other, ashamed. Nana Jo appeared through the crowd, arms crossed, her gaze as fierce as a lioness. We reap what we sow, she said loudly, and the words sounded like a verdict. The stepmother tried to regain control. You're good with words, Mr. Walker, but my daughter is a victim. She's been deceived. Deceived? Clara repeated, voice steady, and everyone turned toward her. I wasn't deceived. I was humiliated. But here, I found what you never gave me: respect. I learned I'm not a mistake to be hidden. I'm someone who deserves to exist. The sisters laughed mockingly. But fate has perfect timing. The wind began to shift. Dark clouds gathered fast. Ethan looked toward the horizon. Storm's coming, he murmured. A thunderclap followed, and the first raindrops fell. In seconds, the drizzle turned to a downpour. The wind roared, the lights swayed, the tent above the stage creaked, and a shout came from the barn, the gates open. Chaos erupted. Ethan and Clara ran. Rain poured heavy, turning the soil into mud. The animals were frightened, and one of the calves tried to escape. Without thinking, Clara grabbed a rope and helped Ethan close the gate. The wind whipped against her face, but there was determination in her every move. Blue barked, running in circles. Nana Jo shouted instructions from the porch while neighbors rushed to help. The sound of thunder, rain, and cattle filled the air. Ethan and Clara moved side by side as if they'd been working together for years. When a loose tile flew off the barn roof, Clara climbed a ladder to secure it, but a step gave way, and she slipped. Ethan caught her by the arms, pulling her back just in time. Their eyes met, the world suspended in that instant. I trust you, he said, breathless. I trust you too, she whispered, a trembling smile between fear and courage. When the storm finally passed, the farm was drenched but alive. People hugged, laughing nervously. No one was hurt, and all the animals were safe. The same crowd that had witnessed her humiliation now watched something very different: solidarity, courage, and light. The cameras, soaked with rain, caught the real image: a woman covered in mud, her eyes shining. That night, with mist rising from the ground, the festival resumed inside the barn. The lights were rehung, the pies served, and music returned, hesitant at first, then warm with laughter. Ethan took the microphone again, his eyes on Clara. I've learned that love isn't a show, he said. It's what's left when everything falls apart, and someone's still standing beside you. His words hit deep. Nana Jo wiped her eyes discreetly. Clara's father approached, shame on his face. "Daughter, I failed you. I let them hurt you." Clara looked at him with gentle tiredness. "Dad, I've learned that some wounds don't need someone to blame, only time. And time, finally, is on my side." He lowered his head, in tears. The stepmother and sisters, unable to bear the silence, left without a word. Clara, still wet, hair undone, sat on the porch. Ethan came over with 2 cups of tea. "It's been quite a day," he said. "It has," she replied, gazing at the darkened fields. "But I think the storm cleaned more than just the earth." The next morning dawned washed and bright. The farm breathed as if it had taken a bath for its soul. The air was fresh, and the sunlight played among the droplets still clinging to the leaves. Clara went out early, her hair still damp, and walked to the field where she had planted the sunflower seeds. The ground was covered with tiny green shoots, fragile, yet firm. She knelt, touched the earth, and smiled. "You survived," she whispered. It felt like she was speaking to herself. Ethan appeared behind her, quiet as always. "They'll grow fast," he said, folding his arms. "When the sun gets stronger, they'll turn their faces to it." Clara looked up at him, her eyes glowing with a new light. "That's what I want to do now," she said. "Turn my face toward where the light is." In the days that followed, life returned to rhythm, but something inside them had changed. The farm seemed more alive, laughter had returned, and visitors came more often. Families around the county spoke about Clara's courage, how she faced the storm without hiding. Her story began to spread, but this time not as a joke, as inspiration. One afternoon, Nana Jo found Clara in the kitchen, preparing jars of jam. "You've got good hands for this," the old woman said, tasting with the tip of her finger. "You know what it is? Wounded people usually have good hands. They learn how to care." Clara laughed. "I learned from you." "No, you didn't," said Nana Jo with a smile. "You learned from life. I just gave you the pots." Her father's visit came a few weeks later. He arrived alone, his car covered in dust, his face weary. Clara received him on the porch, not with anger but calm caution. "I came to ask forgiveness," he said. "For not protecting you. For believing the lies they told. I should have defended you." Clara watched him in silence. There were no speeches, only serenity. "Dad, I don't need you to feel guilty. I needed to fall to find my ground. Now I know where it is." He lowered his eyes, tears brimming. "Can I help with anything?" "You can," she said, handing him a shovel. "These sunflowers need stronger soil." He looked at the field and smiled through tears. "I think I can do that." As her father worked beside her, Ethan watched from a distance, proud of her strength. The woman who had once arrived there as the target of mockery now guided others. When the work was done, Ethan walked over. "You're the bravest person I've ever met," he said. Clara wiped the sweat from her forehead with her arm. "Courage," she said, "is just the name we give to moments when there's no turning back." Summer advanced, and the sunflowers grew tall and golden. The farm became a stage for a natural miracle, endless rows of flowers following the sun. School children began visiting, and Clara, notebook in hand, taught them about bees, soil, and patience. They loved hearing how every plant needed time, how every root found its way through resistance. One day, after one of those visits, Ethan found her in the barn, sitting beside Blue, writing in her notebook. "What are you writing?" he asked. "Plans," she said. "I want to start a project to teach others about life in the countryside. I want city kids to come here and see what it means to plant something and wait for it to bloom. I want to call it Turn Toward the Light." Ethan sat beside her. "Beautiful name. I think that's what all of us should be doing." He hesitated for a moment, then took a breath. "Clara, I know what happened that night was heavy. But I also know that sometimes life tests us just to see if we're ready to stay." "Stay?" she asked softly. He nodded. "I want you to stay. Not out of gratitude, not out of rebellion. Stay because this is your place if your heart says so." Clara smiled, the kind of smile that comes from the soul, the kind that lights more than a face. "I want to stay, Ethan. Because here, I don't have to apologize for existing." He smiled back, and for a moment, no words were needed. Nana Joe appeared at the barn door, smiling knowingly, holding a simple brass pendant in the shape of a seed. "I think this belongs to you," she said, handing it to Clara. "To remind you that you're not a mistake, you're something planted." Clara placed it around her neck and felt her heartbeat steady and peaceful. Time passed, and the farm flourished along with the sunflowers. The old humiliating videos disappeared from the internet, replaced by new ones, joyful clips from visitors enchanted by the Turn Toward the Light project. Clara became a local inspiration, not famous for vanity, but for meaning. Schools scheduled visits, and children went home talking about bees, patience, and courage. Ethan, once the man who avoided crowds, now walked among them with ease. Neighbors joked that he smiled more since Clara arrived, and it was true. At night, on the porch, they talked about the future, about expanding the greenhouses, maybe writing a book about the farm's stories. One summer evening, under a sky full of stars, Ethan picked up his guitar and played the same melody from months before. Clara closed her eyes and joined him, her voice steadier now. Their song filled the air like a promise. When the tune ended, Ethan looked at her and whispered, "You're everything I ever dreamed of, I just didn't know the name of the dream." Clara moved closer, their hands meeting. "And you're the reason I finally found mine," she said. Their first kiss came soft, natural, as if the universe had just been waiting for them to remember what they'd always known. The wind swept through the sunflowers, and Nana Joe, peeking from the window, smiled quietly. "At last," she murmured, turning back inside. Months later, the farm hosted the county's harvest again. This time, there were no microphones, no intrusive cameras. Just laughter, food, and music. Clara walked among the tables, confident and radiant. Ethan spoke with neighbors, while Blue, now older, slept by the stage. When the music paused, Ethan stepped up a few steps and called for attention. "Thank you all for being here," he said. "Last year's storm took a lot from us, but it also brought me what I needed most, courage, the courage to start over, and the courage to love. He searched the crowd until his eyes found Clara. And I learned that love isn't what we show, it's what we plant. Everyone looked at her as she walked toward him. Their eyes met, and silence turned into witness. I've learned something too, Clara said. I learned that beauty was never in the mirror, it was in how we see the world. And that true love is the one that lets you be free. The applause came naturally, full of emotion. Nana Joe, eyes glistening, raised a toast. To Clara, who taught us to turn toward the light. The following weeks were pure peace. Clara and Ethan worked side by side, the farm prospering. Her father visited often, helping with maintenance and learning a new way to be a father. Her sisters never contacted her again, and Clara learned that forgiveness doesn't always need reunion. Sometimes, forgiving just means no longer carrying the weight. The love between her and Ethan grew with the same quiet strength as roots in the ground. There was no rush. The proposal came one harvest afternoon, filled with the scent of hay and golden light. Ethan set down a small wooden box. Inside was a simple silver ring, engraved on the inside, light and root. Clara laughed through her tears. You always know what to say. I learned from you, he replied. The wedding was intimate, surrounded by sunflowers and friends. Nana Joe walked ahead of them, carrying the rings in a wicker basket. Children tossed petals, blue barked joyfully, and the sun set exactly as they said I do. Clara wore a light dress, her hair loose, the seed pendant shining against her chest. During the celebration, Ethan played the guitar, and Clara sang. The music drifted across the fields, soft, sincere, and everyone knew they were witnessing something rare, true love, born from respect. Later, after everyone had gone home, Clara and Ethan walked through the sunflowers beneath a dark sky. The flowers seemed to watch over them, tall and silent. Do you remember the day you arrived here? Ethan asked. I do, she said. All I wanted was to disappear. And now? She smiled. Now I want to stay forever. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, and they stood in silence, listening to the distant hum of crickets. The invisible narrator of life could have said that was the end, but it wasn't. Because some stories don't end when love begins, they keep blooming, season after season. On the porch, Nana Joe watched the two of them disappear into the field. She turned up the volume of her old radio, playing a folk song about roots and new beginnings, and whispered to herself, love always finds those brave enough to turn their faces toward the light. And so, between sunflowers and promises, the farm fell asleep wrapped in the peaceful sound of the wind. The imaginary camera slowly pulled back, rising higher and higher, showing the entire field bathed in moonlight, the sunflowers bowing gently, as if saying good night. Clara, the woman who had been sent as a joke, was now the beating heart of a new life. And Ethan, the man who thought he'd lost everything, discovered that sometimes love arrives disguised as an ordinary miracle. The final image was simple and powerful, two silhouettes walking side by side through the fields, hands intertwined, laughter blending with the wind, and the seed pendant glowing like a tiny star. And the narration's last words, soft and firm. They didn't win by spectacle, but by constancy. And they discovered that when love looks within, life blooms without.